And we will remember to use our microphones if we can. So I will call the meeting to order. We have a quorum present and we have an agenda in front of us, so we'll go through with that agenda. The first item would be review and approval of the minutes of the previous meeting, which is November 29th. Is there a motion?
Sure.
Go ahead. Motion to approve as submitted?
Motion to approve. I propose a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the motion?
I don't think I have any.
All set? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay, motion carries. The next item of business would be public comment. Is there any public comment to be heard? Seeing none, we'll move on to select board input. Andy is not here, so we'll move ahead to department head presentations. Chief Jesse Peters was scheduled to discuss the public safety items tonight, but informed the committee this afternoon that he has COVID and is unable to participate tonight. We need to reschedule that. And what I was thinking, given that our budget presentation is in March, we would be able to do that at our next regular meeting in January, if that's okay. Otherwise, we'll look for some dates to schedule a special meeting to hear the presentation from Chief Peters. Is the regular meeting in January okay? Because that'll give us time to get ready for the presentation in March if we need some extra time with Chief Peters. Okay, so we'll do that. So the next department head presentation would be Matt Nielsen, our road commissioner, and Matt is here to present the upgrade of the track excavator to the wheeled excavator as we discussed in the prior meeting. So Matt, the floor is yours.
So as we discussed in the last meeting, speaking of this, we right now at this time have a tracked machine excavator, and looking forward for the replacement costs, I would like to upgrade to a wheeled machine. I had the wheeled machine on the last price sheet, which honestly I don't know if I brought with me. It was 210,000. We had jumped that too, and I didn't have a price for a track machine to compete with that in a sense. And going with looking into that since the last meeting, the price for a track machine would be $195.
$195
for the same machine, but just on tracks, not on wheels.
Well, we had, in the minutes, we had one somewhere from, oh, it had gone up to 198 from 195. For a
Yes,
track machine, yeah.
for, I think that was from the year prior to that.
Yeah, because we included in the plan, the track machine, which I thought you said would be 198. Now I think you were kind of
Yeah.
hazarding a guess at that point.
Yes, that's what I was guessing at. I reached out to a few different vendors and 195 is the.
Well, okay,
I
so
got
we'll-
for that.
We'll adjust.
So it's, I mean, 198 to $193,000.
Okay.
I don't know, you know,
All right,
exactly.
but I just want to make sure we get,
Yes.
plan is in agreement with you. So we'll put that in the plan.
Yep.
Unless we agree as a committee to upgrade to the wheeled machine, which you said was how much? 210?
210.
210, okay.
Yes, that's what.
Which the wheeled machine was what we talked about, like last year, upgrading to, because then, as we talked about in the last meeting and the meetings before, we wouldn't have as much of a need for a trailer, and it would be more useful, for other, purposes, such as the roadside mowing, which I also reached out and got, I got three numbers on that, which are all pretty much, they average out to about $30,000 for the head of the, just for the mulching head itself, for say which could go on a wheeled machine or a track machine, just to be clear. But putting it on a track machine and walking the track machine down the road would wear out the undercarriage a lot faster than the wheeled machine, so it wouldn't be smart to do that.
So you'd have to repair the roads more often too.
Yes, especially if it had,
You said
that was
35 grand?
30,000.
Down from 35 from last.
I think that was last year was 30. If it was,
Well, you told us at the last meeting it was 35,000 for the head.
I think I threw that number out
As a safety net.
as a off my head, but reaching out, it was 30 grand, I was told by the people when I actually reached out to them and they gave me the money. So that's down a little bit. And then, that also, we had talked about either combining that with the total price of the unit or keeping it as a separate line item where it's well over the $10,000 for like a CIP cost.
So combine, if you put both of those together, we're talking about a $240,000 item versus a $195,000 item, right?
Yes. But also with that combined, compared to the $195,000 item, we're getting a lot more use and a lot more versatility out of that, which we can't use with just the $195,000 machine. That is strictly set up for, you know, the stuff we use it for now, but the roadside mowing in a sense, and other purposes that we'd use the wheeled machine for, such as like shouldering, and there's a couple different things, but just the roadside mowing itself, I spend roughly $5,000 a year on rented machines and mowing roadsides.
Unless we wouldn't, oh, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Regarding mowing, with a wheeled machine, would you be able to move faster, mow faster than with a tractor?
Yes, and also we'd be able to mow more on like our schedule. So instead of, right now, I rent a machine usually once, maybe twice a year. And we have that machine for a set amount of hours, whether it's 40 hours. So we mow for that week or 2 weeks. Where if we had this machine, it'd be a lot easier to, you know, mow a week here in the beginning of the year, because we'd own it. We wouldn't have to set up a rental fee and try to get it, you know, here. And then we could mow in the later in the year. Typically this time of year is when you do the mowing of like not as much grass, but like your small trees and shrubs and stuff like that in the ditch line. Yes.
So it's not, what you're saying is that a wheel machine is not only more versatile, it's more efficient.
Yes. And we wouldn't need, typically you need at least one person in a truck and a trailer, sometimes two, to move the other machine, where this one could be moved throughout town easily with one person.
And this would reduce the need for a trailer, which your price was around 30,000 for a trailer.
Yes.
So we're looking at a difference of 40,000. We don't need to buy a $30,000 trailer, and we don't need to spend $5,000 a year on rental.
Yes, which also the rentals are getting harder and harder. They're getting more expensive and harder to use just because there's less people that are getting into the rental field of this machine.
What are we doing for trailer now?
So for right now, my questions with the trailer regarding even getting the wheeled excavator is just, for the time being that we have the machine that we have, we're either renting a trailer or trying to use an adjacent town's trailer. They will let
Okay,
me
so-
use one.
So before we throw the trailer into the mix,
Yeah,
if you had, and maybe we ought to look at a little bit, these two items separately, because we can get the wheeled machine and not do the mulching head.
yes,
Can't do it the other way around.
yes. And down the road, not to cut you off, but if we got the wheeled machine and then say 2 years down the road, we said, well, now we can afford this head for it would still go on the machine, and that machine could do that much more with that head.
Right, so that's where I was kind of heading is right now, if we wanted to get the wheeled machine, we could say the rental cost of the trailer that we now spend is a savings.
Mhm.
Right, we don't have to go buy a $30,000 machine now because we've never,
We're not gonna
we
use,
didn't last year, we didn't the year before, and we had the same equipment.
Yeah.
And while you did put that on the table last meeting, I didn't sense a strong urgency in the committee that we needed to go out and get a trailer.
yeah,
So let's just say that trailer right now is a rental that we could avoid.
Mhm.
So how much is that rental? I don't know if you just said it or not, I can't remember.
So typically, we can't rent, that's the only thing is, we can't rent town to town. I can't rent a machine to North Yarmouth, I can't rent, so right now, there is no rental fee for the trailer if I borrow it from an adjacent town. But if I rent one from, say, a rental dealership, Easy Rental or any of them, it's usually around $250 a day
Okay,
for that.
so let's just, so if we were doing a reasonable argument here, if you rent it from a rental place, it's $250 a day. Let's just say, if that's the market rate,
Mhm.
and if you borrow Durham's, it's $250 a day. You may
Yep.
not have to pay it because you're gonna barter that somehow.
Yeah,
So if I were doing it, I would argue that if I did 10 days from the rental company and 15 days from Durham, I would put up all those days at $250 a day.
Mhm.
And I'd say that would be the savings in dollars. That's the value of that.
Yep.
That we could avoid. So that I can put against the super run to 10, 5, so it's $15,000 of an investment here.
Yeah.
There's a return on that investment. That there's a cash return on that investment I can
Yeah.
show. Then you talked about there's certain efficiencies we could garner if we had the wheel machine.
Mm.
Because it's easier. You don't tie up as many people to move it.
Yep.
Right? That's gotta be, if you can have two guys playing around with that machine or one guy off doing some productive work for taxpayers, that's gotta have a value. I mean, it's the same thing we did with the wheel loaders, is that's gotta have some value. So we ought to be able to quantify how many hours a year does that make up?
Yeah.
Can we if we can do that, we can put a cost on it and say, all right, we're gonna be that much more productive. And is there any other production savings? And now we're on our way to saying the wheeled machine, I think, can make some sense. And we can show some hard costs and some productivity savings on that. Then we can look at, if we had the wheeled machine, we could also invest in a mulching head. Mulching head will save, we will avoid $5,000 in rentals or running a machine to do that. So that's $5,000 in return for investing $30,000. Is that a good deal? We can make adjustment. Is there something else? You're saying, you get the flexibility. You get, maybe you would do more mowing if you had the machine readily available. Because you have, spring growth and then you have maybe a second growth. So you might do, maybe not the whole town, but parts of the town that are a problem.
yeah, and seasonal stuff.
Right, so there, we could look at how could we put a value on that work for the town? And say, investing $30,000 gets us hard savings and then some soft savings in more value and services to the town. Can we quantify that kind of stuff?
I believe so.
That's what
And I haven't, and I didn't do that today. I honestly, so the trailer thing, you're right, that to me is a total different project. That was, or issue. That's more of and I know we haven't had it in the past, that was me more reaching out just because that's a need that it's one of those things, if you don't have it right now, but you still have the machine that it's sitting in the yard and it still needs to move, I mean, rather than renting and doing that, that's where I see the need for the piece of equipment to do that. The wheeled excavator and the mulching head, just to be clear, that's what I believed we were planning for, not even just me, but prior to me, like moving forward when we do replace this machine. Which I'm fine with getting you both prices on both the tracked and the wheeled. But that's what I was believed that we were moving forward to because it is a cost savings and we wouldn't need that.
2 points. One, what's the difference in maintenance between a track machine and a wheel machine? I've driven track equipment and wheel equipment, so what's the difference there in maintenance?
So that's also gonna vary with how much you move this machine down the road. If we end up buying a mulching head and you take the track machine and you walk it down every road in the town of Pownell, it's gonna need an end of carriage sooner than later, you know, where a wheeled machine is set up for that. So it's made to travel, you know, while doing the job, and that's gonna need less maintenance. Year to year maintenance, it's probably around the same, but once you get up to the 5-year mark where you're gonna have to be replacing bogey wheels and stuff like that on the track machine, you might have to do tires on the wheeled excavator, just like any other wheeled machine that we have in the yard.
You throw a lag, it's a big headache. I think we should consider in the cost of the mowing as well, and this is my reason for it. If we're paying $5,000 a year for mowing, in 7 years, we pay off the cost of the head. The head itself, we pretty much can assume 20 years, most likely a lot more than 20 years. So that savings could also go to help pay for the difference in this track machine, because realistically, you couldn't put that head on a track machine. You'd be staving up your road and down the ditch and transporting it and everything. So I think we could include how much we're saving in mowing beyond that 7 years where it would pay for the head. It would help pay off for the wheeled excavator instead of the track excavator. I think that cost could be applied here.
Yes, and I guess to go off that as well is the track, if we end up buying a brand new track machine, I can see the need to buy a low bed or a trailer to move this machine. Where I see your point, whereas if we're already looking into buying a wheeled machine, there's probably not a lot of sense to spend that $30,000 on the trailer. Because we won't be moving that machine, which is its main purpose of that job. So I do agree in that sense, where so you're gonna be taking that out of the equation.
Yeah, I think if you want, yeah, as part of the justification to move from track to wheeled, if you really believe the trailer is a necessity to go with that, even though we haven't had a trailer for a while and we seem to be doing what we need to do, then, you know, that could be part of that justification. If we're gonna have a track machine, what we're doing today is not an acceptable practice. It's inefficient, it's not cost effective, but you need to demonstrate what all those things are. Then the track machine is 195 plus 30.
Mhm.
For the, you know, that's the right way to do it, and you can, you know, show.
Yeah, and that's basically, I don't have the figure on paper, you're correct, but that's basically what I'm saying is the $30,000 difference is your trailer that you're gonna need to move that piece of equipment.
And didn't you say last time too, it was getting more and more difficult to borrow equipment from neighboring towns because of insurance issues?
Well, insurance reasons, it's just like if you hook onto your neighbor's trailer.
So they're taking a risk.
Yeah, so you're taking a risk. So, yes, that would be, and I don't, like I said, I don't have that figured out, but basically if we went out and bought this brand new machine, we can't rely on Durham to use their trailer for the next 25 years to move our machine. That's the point I guess I'm trying to get across.
Oh, and I just did math and, you know, the track machine, assuming we need a trailer, the roadside mowing at $5,000 a year, trailer rental for 20 days is at $235. Whereas the wheeled machine with the head is $240. So.
Have you talked to Auburn at all? I see they bought a wheel loader. They're using it on the road going up to Auburn.
I have not talked to them, actually, but I have seen that they have done that.
Yeah, they went to
So-
a wheel loader with with a mulching head. I'm
Yeah.
not sure if it
So
may be
that's-
more powerful than what
that's-
we need.
That's a bigger machine that I'm looking to purchase, but that's a similar machine. But moving forward, that's a mulching head, and that's one of the things that's more of like the tree work, which. And getting towards that, when I say mulching head, this is also gonna be it's probably gonna be more of a flail mower. In a sense, but it's gonna do the same purpose. I don't really see the purpose of, we're not gonna need to take down trees that are 18 inches around.
Yeah,
But to mow grass on the side of the road and honeysuckle and stuff like that, that's what this would be more for. So this isn't like a tree eating machine necessarily. This is more of a maintenance and, keeping the grass and weeds and stuff back. But yes, that is similar to the machine.
yeah, if you could check with them on why they went to a wheel one, that head is humongous and
Yeah.
like you said, it took down trees. But yeah, they could probably give you a lot of information on why they switched.
I could definitely do that. And I know that I think they actually have several of them. So, but I can definitely check into that and see.
So is the head you're talking about a mulching head? Is that the proper term?
So the mulching head is the head that I have been referring to. Mulching head is very similar to, say, a flail mower. A flail mowing head is gonna have the same rotations, but it has different knives. And it's more for cutting small material and like grass compared to like, I don't want somebody to think that this isn't like a tree killing device.
So should we refer to it as the flail mowing?
Flail mower, yes.
Flail mower, okay.
A mulching head has these big drums with steel hardened teeth on it that's similar to what they use stripping the limbs off trees and
Yeah.
delimber.
Yeah.
And a flail one, you just flings it rather than bring it in these huge teeth grind it, which it's a much more expensive unit and more repairs needed and things. So, yeah.
But and that's one of those things, looking into it, the cost between the size that I'm looking at for the mulching head and the flail mower is very compatible. They're the same thing, like I said. That's just if you want one or the other. And so that's why we've been calling it a mulching head, but just to make sure that it's not just for eating trees, it's also for.
I just want to make sure we're all using the same term
Yep.
and throughout town.
Yes.
Are there any other questions for Matt? Oh, sorry, Bo, you had a question? Excuse me, sir, would you step to the microphone?
Yeah, I'm Bo Chesney. I'm the liaison with the Budget Committee. My question is, what would be the timing of this transaction or the acquisition of this particular piece of equipment? I'm just thinking of, we're talking about potential savings in rental fee. And I know I'm going to be grilling Matt when he comes to the Budget Committee on his
Yeah.
operating budget. So
This item is currently scheduled for 2027.
27. Thank you very much.
And we haven't heard any reason that we want to change that, right?
No, I mean, I plan on keeping it the same if we can. That's 2027.
Okay.
Thank you.
And the trade-in, I mean, the excavator we have now looks in really good condition.
It has some small issues, but that's the other point of this is I can't estimate exactly, but we're probably gonna get, I would say well over $10,000 trade-in. So you're probably gonna be looking at, you never know unless something drastic happened, but you're probably gonna be looking at $20,000 to $30,000 trade-in for that machine. On the low side, but just to be conservative.
Okay, but we don't plan for that, but so that begs the question though. Given if we went with this, we would be spending an extra $45,000 to get where you want to be. But we only have 2 years to accumulate, or 3 years to accumulate the funds, the extra funds to cover that. Have you given any thought to maybe if we increase the investment, we would move that out? Is the equipment in its life cycle available to move out while we accumulate the additional funds, or should we look at taking it out of the current plan and making it up somehow?
I would plan on replacing this for the same plan that we have. If we have issues with that, I mean, like we said, I'd rather not, but we could thinking about this as looking at it as one whole unit with the flail mowing unit on it. Because that's kind of, it needs the machine to run, but the machine itself could be bought and used solely without that. So I would like to replace the machine and possibly get the mulching or the flail mower if we could in 2027 on the scheduled time. But with that being said, if we can't do all of it at 2027, I understand that as well, but I would rather not push off our machine that we have now further than that.
Okay, I'm just kind of opening the door that if the committee, when it gets to the point of looking at what's the status of the plan with all of the inputs that we've had from you and other departments, if we see an issue, that would be one thing the committee might look at and say, all right, to resolve the issue, we need more time to accumulate the extra funds for that. Not saying they will, but just kind of put it on the table.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? Let me just see if I'm correct in my interpretation of the consensus that I'm hearing, is that there's really no objection to what Matt is proposing. In fact, it anecdotally makes some sense. You did some arithmetic that demonstrated, or at least headed to the right ballpark. So I think I can say, unless the committee takes exception, that it's anecdotally sounds like a good idea and would be for the benefit of the town. But personally, I would like to see you put to paper all of the things we just discussed here that says this makes sense operationally, financially, before we make a final decision.
Yep, no, I understand that, and I know I sort of planned on having that here for you tonight, and I don't, and I'm sorry about that. But moving forward, I will definitely try to have that all planned out so you guys can see the whole thing.
Yeah,
Thank you for running that real
Yeah.
quick.
I mean, if we can just kind of,
Yeah,
and I would
it's a
also.
lot easier.
Yeah, include, and for the record, that we could say, all right, why did we, with only 3 years left on that asset, upgrade it?
Yeah.
And put in for the record that, well, if you have an opinion, if you have a strong opinion that if we're gonna continue with a tracked vehicle, we really gotta look at that trailer seriously. And why do we need to do that? Because then if you can make the case that that's really the right way to operate, you can turn around saying that's for your benefit if you go to the wheeled machine.
Yes.
You can remove that trailer.
Yes, moving off this and not to get off subject, last year when we went through this, we had moved to just get the price of the wheeled machine for the going forward. So that is why I did not add the track machine on this year's CIP list.
Yeah, there was a miscommunication because we thought you were coming back in with a full discussion of these are the benefits.
Okay,
And we would have, had the same discussion back then. So we were
Yeah.
just on a different page. So is there any objection to kind of going forward anecdotally? We think this is a good idea. We'd like to see that. And then as soon as we have that, we'll take a vote as to whether or not to make this upgrade. Okay? Does that work for you, sir?
that does.
Okay, good.
Yes.
And if you need, I've got some notes. Teresa has some notes. If you, when you go to write it up, if you need some help, you can contact us.
Yeah, I think I have the majority of it.
Well, it's on, I mean, you can listen.
And you can go listen to the discussion. I keep forgetting that, or watch it too.
You have any other, I know you had one other question for me. I don't know if you want to address that now or not. Or at least,
Do you know what the question was?
so I was asked at the last meeting, moving forward with replacement of any vehicle, but especially vehicles that we're gonna be asking to replace, say, a year early. when the funds were gonna have to be allocated for that. And the answer to that is the funds will be taken out of the CIP account, but put into the general government account. And it doesn't matter if it's, until that vehicle is completed, it stays in that account, basically, once it's voted on and approved. And then after that, any of the residual fund that's left gets put back into CIP. So the date, say a dump truck or an excavator or whatever we bought, would come out of CIP when it was voted on. But it would not get spent out of the general government fund until the vehicle
So
was.
the appropriation from the capital reserve happens in the year we vote it, even though delivery may be a year away.
Yes.
Okay. No, that's a good thing.
So that was, I think that was a question.
Yeah, I had forgotten about that one, but it's a good thing to have all of us on the same page.
Mm.
Yeah, this happened when they were working on the bridge or something. Funds were voted on at town meeting. They weren't spent during that calendar year, and it was decided that was fine. They didn't, once they were voted on for that particular item, they did not have to be spent during that calendar year. They could go on to the next year, and we ran into that once before.
Unless the vehicle or anything is altered, I believe. If you're, if you were voting on something else, but as long as you're buying that item or whatever.
Well, whatever the
voted on.
amount is that's
Yep.
designated at town meeting, that's held until the item is bought.
Yes,
And
that's the way I understood it as well.
correct.
Okay, thank you very much, Matt, for coming back with that, and we'll look to your written submission on the items we've just talked about today, and then we can make a formal vote to approve the wheeled excavator and the mulching flailing head if it suits the committee at that time.
And so does that mean that we would like to have that written submission in advance of next?
We would like, yeah, good point, Kyler. We would like to have it.
Next couple, 2-3 weeks.
Yeah. So that, I'd like to have it so that we've all read it and thought about it before we get here. And we can get through it pretty quickly.
Yep.
Oh, did you have a question?
We're working on the investment policy for the town and how we invest our funds and making sure that we're doing it appropriately and to maximize yield, et cetera. And we want to make sure that those funds are credited to the proper accounts, so that if the CIP funds are invested in CDs or whatever, then that income gets credited back to that fund, which is generally occurring now.
Mhm.
But my question is, in lieu of Matt's comment that from an accounting standpoint, if the funds technically come out of the CIP fund when items are appropriated, that means that do the investments that are in that fund, we have to assure us sufficient liquidity that basically the day after town meeting, those funds would be transferred into the general fund.
Right.
And you could go, say you had an 18-month window, a significant asset of $250,000, that could be $250,000 worth of income that the CIP fund is missing. And even, throughout the year, because if all the appropriations for CIP for 1 year come out at, July 1st, then you're missing, potentially 12 months on that as well. Is that what I'm
Well,
understanding?
Well, I think look at it this way. Forget the fact that there's a supply chain issue and you can't get a vehicle the day you go to the lot to buy it. If everything was normal, then $250,000 is appropriated out of the capital reserve and the town goes and buys the vehicle and brings it home and starts doing business. you still appropriate it out at the same way you would. And then if Matt goes to the lot to get the vehicle and they say, well, it's going to take a year, CIP this committee's done with it. We've given the money to the town to go make the expenditure. The town would, if they now say, all right, I've got $250,000 of excess cash, they should invest it in their account. And this,
You don't factor in any potential interest? That's.
not once we've appropriated, that becomes general fund money, not capital reserve money.
There's a problem if we don't move it out of the capital plan. Because if it stays in that year, it messes up our plan because the next year, you know, we have to realize that it's gone. We can't still have it hanging around for the next
Here's
year.
your balance, but it's not really that balance, it's this.
Yeah.
Right.
Three things hanging or something.
Yeah, we do, I mean, I don't know, Rodney's got a point, is that we do reconcile back to the town audit every year. So that we don't wind up projecting using the same funds more than once. But from an investment standpoint, I think our expectations is that anything that's in the capital reserve account is earning money. And that it's our job to inform the town how much we need to actually spend when. So the excess cash can be determined and that invested with different vehicles.
With maturities that.
That allow, yeah, right. So you could do it
July 1st.
CD ladder or something but we can say this is the liquidity we need for 2027. We can say this is what we expect the expenditures to be. And therefore that gets appropriated at town meeting. The fact that it isn't actually spent, I don't think needs to bother us. Because it was not planned to be invested, it was planned to be spent.
But for liquidity purposes, because it's being effectively transferred on July 1st, the liquidity has to be there as of July 1st.
Right, and and if the truck was sitting across the street and you were gonna go pick it up and hand the check, we need to be ready for that. And that way, I mean, we shouldn't have to worry about whether it's, given the clarity Matt provided, we shouldn't have to worry about whether that truck is out a year for delivery or out a year or out of 20 days for delivery. It's just, we got the money there in the year that we had said we would appropriate it.
And that's fine, and I understand that. I just want to make sure that we would understand the implications
Right.
from an investment standpoint. And when Becky or the treasurer, whoever's the treasurer, needs to look at liquidity needs, they can just look at basically at that point, they can be looking at the general fund on a cumulative basis.
Right. So, yeah, but then they'd look at the liquidity of the general fund.
Right, exactly, yeah.
So that would get out of here. We would expect though, that if when you go pick up that truck rather than 250, you only actually had to spend 230. Even though that money sat in the general.
You want it back?
Now we want it back. Well, even though that money sat in the general fund for a year, it still originated in the capital reserve and that.
But one
should
would
flow back.
presume that you're not expecting the interest on that.
Correct.
Okay, that's big. I think that makes infinite sense from a practical standpoint.
Yeah, from a planning standpoint, as Rodney was suggesting, we couldn't possibly plan for these supply chain issues that we have no part in.
Yeah, and from an accounting standpoint.
Right.
it's a nightmare.
But, we do, built into our projections is a certain, right now, we have the interest rate that's on our capital reserve account built in as providing monies available for future appropriation based on the appropriation schedule we have. Now, if we can get to the point where we're investing that in a different way, the excess cash produces significantly more income, then that's great for the town because that starts buying equipment with
Right.
interest earned.
Okay.
So I think we're on the same page. Okay, great.
And any item that isn't traded in but is sold later, that money also comes back to the CIP account. So if
That's my.
Yes, as it did a couple weeks ago.
Oh, good.
Whatever issue asset was originally acquired through CIP fund.
Yeah.
Is subsequently sold and traded in or whatever, back to the
Yes, yes.
Anything that comes from CFP goes back to CFP.
Right, any salvage or trade-in or anything like that comes back, right, and use, and in my email where I distributed the agenda to the committee, I did mention that Becky had informed me that we had sold 2 items in town. One was a Sterling truck, the other was I don't forget what the other item was. Yeah, it was like $4,000 of salvage came back into the CIP or the capital reserve account. So it's the first time we've seen that in a long time, but that's good.
Yeah.
Okay, the next item on the agenda was a review of the current status of the plan. I'm gonna say, let's jump over that for a minute. We have, because Jesse wasn't here, we've got time to take a look at the draft committee charge that's attached to the agenda.
And this was drawn up by Andy, wasn't it?
This is drawn up by Andy based on the feedback from the committee in our session in September from work that we had done the prior year. And so there's a draft committee charge there. There's also the current committee charge, which we had agreed last year does not really define what this committee does. At least we don't think it does. So I'd be looking for some comments and thoughts on the draft. The intent is that we would find time through this year to agree on the new committee charge and propose it back to the select board. So floor is open for comments. So as you're looking at the words, I mean, the bullets talk about developing, the committee maintains a 20-year estimate of future capital needs of the town, accounting for inflation, interest rates, interest income, and yearly cost estimates on capital items. That's pretty much what we do now. So I think we would agree with that. We also separate appropriation funding versus bonding funding, and look to, and this says we will provide a 5-year smoothing of appropriations, and that's the years 1 through 5, which we do now. We also now do additional smoothing if we think it's required, and that's variable. Could be for 1 year, could be for 10 years, just to kind of get the hills and valleys out of the appropriation process, and to give us a more reasonable look, because sometimes that the calculations just go up and down a little more erratically than we can just look at and judge from. It also suggests that we provide a complete asset list. We are providing an asset list now. As to whether or not it's complete, we'd have to discuss that. Includes public safety, vehicles, town buildings, infrastructure, public facilities, and any equipment therein. We don't currently provide town buildings. That's something that we should probably address that at some point, because you don't replace town buildings like you do dump trucks. Town building, you may have it, pardon me? Hopefully, yeah. At least not on purpose, right? But typically, like Mallet Hall, you may put a 50-year life on this building, but it's gonna last a lot longer than that because it's well maintained and taken care of. So definition of capital expenditure and cost thresholds for both appropriation and bonding items. We have all of that now, certainly should be reviewed. Define and recommend sources and thresholds of financing, including appropriation, bonds, lease, impact fees, grants, and TIF and interest income. So that kind of expands what we've been looking at from what we've done the last few years. Um, particularly noting the TIF money that we might want to consider as a source of income at some point for public works facilities, let's say, or public safety. Also impact fees, we've not considered them as a source of revenue for future needs of the committee, but might be appropriate. An approval process to add or delete items to the asset schedule. We have that informally now between the select board and the committee. This would require that we have a more formal process, or at least get it down there. I think we may have, Rodney, you and I may have felt there was a formal process, but it would have been within a committee charge that really doesn't exist, as we learned. So that might need to be done, and then communicate with other boards, committees, and departments on a regular basis. And again, that was part of our discussion. If you remember that, we want to make sure there's an awareness that as other committees are going about their business, that they're thinking about what their business might mean for capital assets in the town, to make sure that they're on our radar when it's time to fund them. And our concern was that we can't see everything, but we can certainly communicate with other committees to make sure they're putting that into the lens that they're looking through, because we could, we get caught short, then we're gonna not be able to fund it. And then it talked about having a committee up to 7 members appointed by the select board. We're currently up to 5 now, which is good. So we have room to grow if we need to. And then a 2/3 quorum of membership needed to hold a legal meeting.
Paul, I have a comment on that.
Certainly.
I think in there, maybe we should say, we asked this of the town clerk, I believe. So at 5 people, you would need, it's 3 point something, and she decided that 3 made a quorum. If you have 7 people, it come out to like 4 and a fraction. So can we say that 2/3 quorum, if it comes out to a fraction of a person, it gets lowered? So that, because instead of requiring 4 people out of 5, she said 3 out of 5 made the quorum. Instead of having to have 5 out of 7, you'd have 4 out of 7. Right? Because the 2/3 leaves us every time having to go back and ask permission of, I assume that wasn't a legal requirement because they were willing to reduce the fractional amount.
Well, we don't have many fractional people in Powell. That's
Right, so
one of the
that's what I'm
problems.
saying
And
is we
it was
go
under
with the-
3, it was under 3.5.
Well,
I
the
remember.
next one would be over 3.5.
Okay, yeah.
The next one would be 4 2/3. So I guess
4 2/3 is
We-
kind of 5.
we'd have to have 5.
Right. Well, we probably should ask for, because I think 2/3 quorum is common throughout Pownell. And I think, so we would maybe ask for clarification or,
So are we rounding up after the halfway point? Like, if
Right.
we had 7 members, do we
Yeah.
need 4 or 5? Because, right now we're at 3 1/3, I think it was we need, but at 7, we need 4 2/3. And
I mean, I agree with Paul, like it should just be set across the board.
Right.
If the assumption is going to be, if it's 3 1/3 people, it's gonna be rounded down. At what point would it be rounded up? I mean, it just should be set, the select board. I mean,
Total number.
yeah, I mean, something,
Right.
because I mean, it's always gonna be, you're always,
right. So,
at 2/3, there's always gonna be some sort of fraction of a person.
yeah, we'll have to, I mean,
right.
it was my impression from Becky that that is following the convention used by the town. And so if we need a more formal clarification, we should get it to make sure that, I don't want to find out that we get 3/4 of the way through the year and find out all of a sudden we got meetings and votes that aren't appropriate anymore because we didn't round properly. So I'll ask as the moderator in town from prior years, do you have any thoughts on that?
Nothing we can make a motion.
And then, I didn't know whether your experience around town would have,
It may affect other committees as well, and they may just be assuming that they have a quorum and
rounding makes some sense. But, you know, the smaller the committee, the tougher it is.
Well, when there were three of us, we kind of,
Yeah, when, with the three of us for what, a couple of years, it was like, all right, it's always whole numbers.
okay, at 1.5, we gotta have at least two people out of the
Right.
three, you know, it was, well, came out 2 out of 3, right?
Okay, is there any other comments on that? Yeah, I've got notes. We'll get clarification on that. Anything else we would, Bo?
Yeah, does it, I don't see anywhere where, a capital asset is being defined. Whatever the dollar value. Maybe it is, but.
Well, we did,
Yeah.
it's not an include in this, but it was defined as $10,000 for the asset threshold. It didn't make it into this draft. So I'm not sure why it didn't make it in.
Well, the third bullet says define a capital expenditure.
As our chart.
And I believe that was intended to set the $10,000 threshold. It should follow probably the accounting requirements of the town for audit purposes.
So I think the
Yeah,
chart,
just, you know, I'm not picky, but the second point, provide a complete asset list. You're gonna have every branch on there?
well, that would be the spreadsheet we used. And
Yeah, okay.
I think the reason it's not on there, I'm guessing, is that as, you know, at some point, you know, down the road, eventually, a lawnmower is $10,000. It's not gonna be at, you know, we've got to keep up with inflation. This is our charge of how to operate, and for example, our threshold from, coming out appropriations to bonding changes as inflation increases. So I imagine someday our threshold for being a capital asset is gonna have to change. As, wouldn't you think, Paul, as
Yeah,
inflation
I think,
increases?
I think the second bullet should be changed to provide a complete capital asset list. So it's not every wrench, but it's every capital asset. And then we define a capital expenditure that would then tie those two together such that then we only get, if we define it as a $10,000 expenditure, if that's, you know, how the audit is determining a capital expenditure, we should probably follow that or have reasons why we're not. And
Should
then,
we put something in there that it's reviewed? Like the $10,000 expenditure should be reviewed every so often. to
Yeah.
account for inflation, because it's
yeah,
not, Rodney's point, in 20 years, it's not gonna be $10,000.
right.
Well, since this is,
One word doesn't cost $10,000.
Right.
I'm hoping not right away. Although, things have been going up. So since this is a draft, can we make some changes? Do we want to make them tonight or just
If we,
talk about it?
well, yeah, let's get as many comments as we can and, you know, and we'll bring back the changes for a vote. But I'm putting in here a note that we should, the capital asset list, the capital expenditure, whatever that is defining, should be reviewed in concert with the auditor on a regular basis or periodic basis.
That, like Teresa said, that was Teresa's point.
Yeah,
And did you want to change a complete asset list to a complete capital asset list?
yes.
Okay.
And I did put that comment in here. And so,
What about strategies and objectives? That looks pretty good.
those I want to discuss separately because those are coming out of the comprehensive plan.
Okay.
And I just want to just review them with everyone. So are we good to make, is there any other changes we would like to make to this draft? And we'll bring it back at a future meeting to see if the changes make sense and at some point vote on it.
Comment, he's already changed the name of our committee to Capital Plan Funding and Advisory Committee. We hadn't decided on a name change yet.
Right.
It's here in the draft as a name change because that's the title of it. Capital Plan
Okay.
Funding and Advisory Committee. So I think we ought to discuss if that's the name we want for our committee. Right now, we're the CIP committee, and that's not the title of it.
Right. CIP is so easy to remember though.
Well, then we need to,
Well, we can, we can come up with different words to go with. I mean, I think Rodney, you raised the point in the prior year that are we really doing capital planning? And in the traditional sense of capital planning, yeah, we're looking at capital assets and we're making a plan for the refreshment of those assets to provide services to the town. But are we doing capital planning in the, what somebody might perceive as the traditional sense of capital planning? I'm throwing that out as a question.
well, CIP was the Capital Improvement Planning Committee, and we don't really improve that was my point, is
Right.
it doesn't say really what we do. And the name has been changed here and I'm without discussion. So I really think if this draft is going forward, we ought to discuss the name of the committee.
Right.
And
So here you go. How about the Capital Asset Plan Funding and Advisory Committee? We'd be CAP and rather than CIP. Because we only deal with the capital assets that fit. Right? It's the equipment. It could be the buildings. I mean, we have the roads in there, but we treat them differently because the life of roads is so different than a dump truck type of thing. And again, this is just a suggestion. It's not a final decision. Would that make,
I like it better than CIP.
okay,
Although I kind of like the word funding.
so if we had capital asset plan funding.
I think throwing out lots of names and then just thinking about them, I don't have any partiality to any particular one.
I have what's probably a stupid question. Advisory committee, aren't all committees advisory?
Doesn't need to be in there.
Well, we do make recommendations for appropriations.
Which is what all committees do,
Right.
is make recommendations.
We do, for a lot of reasons, harass our department heads from time to time. Well, that's an advisory role, right? We're advising.
I think Bo had it.
I'm just wondering if the word advisory is necessary. That's all.
Good.
Not a big deal.
Bo, you had a question, comment? Right. Okay, yeah, that's. Teresa, did you have? Well, let's do this. Let's throw the Capital Asset Plan Funding Committee. I think that over time we'll get shortened to CAP. Just because it's a mouthful to say, but let's throw that out there for the next iteration of the draft. And if it doesn't feel right, doesn't fit, and I think, what Rodney's been saying for a couple of years now, we need to have, the name of the committee should reflect what the committee actually does. And that makes sense.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Well, I could go Capital Action Plan Committee. What was the A you put in there before?
Asset plan.
About capital action, we take action and in the funding and either one. I'm okay with
All
CAP.
right.
That
All right.
sounds good. We can figure out
Let's
the A is gonna
let's
be.
redraft this. They're having more fun than we are. That's not fair.
You're not careful, we're gonna make you guys sit on this side.
All right, so let's throw this into the draft and we, it's just the next draft and see if it flows right, fits right, and worry about all the things that those folks out there might call us if we have the wrong name. No. Okay. So the last thing, and we're getting near the end here, is the strategies and objectives. Those come out of the comprehensive plan. And they are, as we changed them last year, because we didn't agree with the original version in the comprehensive plan, we felt these were more reflective of what the committee does. And I just want to make sure that these are still our strategies and objectives of what we're trying to do regardless of what we call ourselves. So provide and maintain a tool promoting sound financial planning and estimating future needs and costs. Recommend timely and cost-effective replacement, renovation, and acquisition of equipment and assets. Evaluate and recommend sources of funding. For replacement, renovation, or acquisition of equipment or assets, and then continue to look for ways to reduce costs. Is that still? Yeah, I want to, I guess what I'm headed towards with these things is we spent some time on it last year. I want to be able to get down to when we write the blurb for the annual town report, that we can refer to these things, or we can refer to what we specifically did relative to these items and point to, this is what we accomplished in this area. And I'll demonstrate that, yeah, the comprehensive plan does have an effect on the committee, and we're following that or adjusting our path as we see appropriate. And then we can point in our annual report back to the town that we have some accomplishments in each of our strategic areas. So that's where we'll come back to this at the end of the year to make sure that that year-end report can say those things. So any questions, comments?
Sounds good. I'm beginning to like your capital asset planning.
Okay.
You won me over.
All right, good.
We all have caps on CIP.
Right, maybe we'll get some caps for the committee and,
I
And we
mean, the
also
way- the
want to
way-
keep a cap on things.
right, yeah.
The way I look at the strategy and objectives, like from in my corporate brain, is it's a self-assessment of, did we follow through with what we're supposed to do?
Exactly, yeah, that's my corporate background as
Yeah.
well, to make sure we keep coming back to that, and if we need to go astray from that, we say why, and we'll change
As long as
this.
we can justify it, then we're.
Right, and if we need to change our strategies going forward for good reason, we'll do that, okay. I had planned, and we'll go back to the agenda now, so that gets us through the committee charge and the comprehensive objectives. Is there any open discussion? Okay, hearing none, I had planned to kind of review the current status of plan, but I'm not sure it makes a whole lot of sense without Chief Peters' input. The next, and we do have the spreadsheet up on the TV that Teresa is managing, showing that. So we'll plan to, at the next meeting, get Chief Peters' input, and then we'll start looking at, all right, what does that mean? And we can have, as Teresa's managing that, maybe updating that as we go, or as we agree to things. And then I want to jump right over to the 5-year smoothing. That's the next assumption we want to put in. If you look at it now, the 5th year has a $1 assumption in it, just as a placeholder. But we want to look at years 1, 2, 3, and 4 are as we had projected them a year ago. Once we get enough information to look at year 5 and get all them in there, is do we want to hold the line with where we had projected from last year? Or do we need to make some adjustment to that because we see things happening in the future? One thing that is helping us is we've lowered the inflation rate from 5% to 4%. So it's not growing, our needs are not growing as fast as we saw a year ago. But we are still at a point where our planned appropriations for years 1 through 4 are less than the rate of inflation. So we want to see how that is balancing out and whether or not we need to make an adjustment. I mean, on the simple sense, all right, we got to keep up with inflation, but it may be that there's enough going on that we don't need to worry about that because the future years are taking care of themselves. We'll see. But that's something we would want to start looking at. If anybody would like to get a copy of the spreadsheet as it sits now, I'd be happy to send it to you. You'll just have to, if you play with it, you'll just have to fill in that 5th year appropriation and see how it changes. And kind of get your own sense. Or just look at it and say, all right, there's what it is. Now I know going in, when that hole gets filled, things are gonna change.
I just have a question, Paul. If we're looking at the spreadsheet up here, is there a way to do away with the picture of us up
Yeah, I
there?
think we
Yes.
can share the screen.
Oh, you can just eliminate that, just show the screen.
Click on this, can you click on the spreadsheet over on the left there? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And for me, I'm a little far away to see that very well, but I have discovered a way to kind of zoom in on that. And I can share that. I mean, I've done that for that screen right there, and we can zoom in on it even more if we have to, but you just start losing real estate on that screen.
Okay.
So if we plan on hearing from Chief Peters next time and then getting right into that first set of assumptions. Fortunately, we don't present to the Budget Committee till March, and that's because I had conflicts. I couldn't make earlier meetings than that, so Becky was kind enough to move our committee back to March 11th. So, question, Bo? Sure, I will do that. Okay. Any other comments or questions? Otherwise, I would suggest that a motion for adjournment would be in order.
Make a motion, we adjourn.
All in favor?